Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine you're on a routine Sunday night flight, maybe heading home, looking forward to landing.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, that whole journey just takes a really dramatic turn.
Right.
That's pretty much exactly what seems to have happened recently on Air India flight AI 2455. It was flying from Thiruvananthapuram, Trandam, as many know it, to Delhi.
A fairly standard domestic route.
Exactly. But this flight, well, it wasn't just any routine journey in the end. It made headlines, actually, because a very senior political figure was on board.
Ah, right. K C Venugopal.
Yes, the senior Congress leader and chairman of Parliament's Public Accounts Committee. He was on that flight.
And he spoke out about it afterwards, didn't he?
He did. He went on social media, on X, and described the whole experience as, and this is his quote, frighteningly close to tragedy.
Wow. That's a strong statement. You can see why that would get attention.
Definitely. And what's really fascinating here, and kind of the core of our deep dive today, is how you get these, well, quite different perspectives shaping our understanding when things like this happen, high-stakes situations.
Absolutely. So our mission, if you like, is to dig into the available sources, try to untangle the sequence of events, explore these differing accounts of what actually happened when the flight had to divert.
We're looking at the passenger's experience versus the airline's official line.
Exactly. And what that gap potentially reveals about aviation safety, communication, all of that.
Okay, so let's start with K C Venugopal's account. It's quite traumatic. He talked about how the journey began with a delay leaving Thiruvananthapuram.
Not unusual in itself, but maybe set a bit of a tone.
Perhaps. Then, about an hour into the flight, he says they hit significant turbulence. Quite rough, apparently.
Okay.
And then the captain makes an announcement. Something about a flight signal fault?
Flight signal fault. That sounds potentially serious.
It prompted an immediate diversion. They were told they were heading to Chennai instead of Delhi.
Right. Makes sense. A signal fault would necessitate landing sooner rather than later.
And then, according to Venugopal, they ended up circling over Chennai for nearly 2 hours, just waiting for clearance to land.
2 hours. That must have felt like a very long time in the cabin. He described it as a period of intense uncertainty.
Yes, that's the impression he gave, just circling, waiting.
So that term flight signal fault, what does that typically mean in aviation? Is it necessarily critical?
Well, it's a bit broad, honestly. It generally points to an issue with the aircraft's navigation or perhaps communication systems. Could be GPS, could be radios, other sensors.
So something you definitely don't want happening mid-flight over long distances.
Precisely. It's serious enough that diverting to the nearest suitable airport is often the standard and safest call. It means the crew might be more reliant on backup systems or getting extra guidance from air traffic control.
So it warrants a precautionary landing, which is what happened with the diversion to Chennai.
Right. So after those 2 hours of circling, they finally attempt to land. And this is where Venugopal describes what he called a heart-stopping moment.
Okay. During the first landing attempt.
Yes. He reported seeing another aircraft reportedly on the same runway they were aiming for.
Whoa. Okay, that would be hard to stop.
Absolutely. And he says this led to the captain making a swift decision to pull up, aborting the landing at the last second, essentially.
A go-around.
He credits this maneuver, this pull-up, with saving lives. He put it down to a matter of skill and luck. Sounds incredibly intense from his perspective.
It certainly does, and you can imagine the feeling in the cabin. But it's interesting he uses the term pull-up. In aviation, what he's describing is almost certainly a go-around.
Okay, a go-around. Is that common?
It's a standard safety maneuver, highly trained. Pilots practice it constantly in simulators and training. They execute it when conditions just aren't optimal for a safe landing.
Like what sort of conditions?
Could be anything, really. An unstable approach, maybe too high, too fast, a sudden change in weather, like wind shear, or potentially, as reportedly described here, an obstruction or conflict on the runway.
So seeing another plane would trigger a go-around?
Absolutely. If confirmed by the tower or visually by the pilots, it's an immediate trigger. It's often the safest decision in a dynamic landing environment, even if it feels really alarming to passengers, because, you're about to touch down and suddenly you're climbing steeply again.
That distinction is really key, isn't it, between what feels like a near disaster to a passenger and what might be a standard, albeit critical, safety protocol from the crew's perspective.
It is, and it often lies at the heart of these differing narratives.
So that's the passenger perspective, deeply unsettling, feeling saved by skill and luck. But when an incident like this gets public attention, especially with a prominent figure involved, what's the typical airline response? How did Air India handle it?
Right. Well, that's where we see the contrast emerge quite clearly. Air India issued a clarification.
Okay, and what do they say?
They stated the diversion itself was purely precautionary. The reasons cited were a suspected technical issue, which aligns somewhat with the signal fault idea and poor weather conditions over Chennai.
Okay, so technical and weather. What about the runway incident? The other plane.
This is the critical part. Air India explicitly denied that another aircraft was in fact on the runway.
Denied it completely.
That's what their statement says. They maintained that whatever happened during that first approach, the instruction or the decision to climb away, was simply a standard safety maneuver.
Essentially a go-around executed as per standard operating procedures.
Exactly. So they frame it not as an emergency avoidance, but as the system working correctly in response to. Well, they don't explicitly say what prompted the go-around, just that it was standard and not due to another plane being there.
Wow. That really highlights the gap, doesn't it? What feels like a dramatic life-saving decision to a passenger is presented by the airline as basically business as usual for safety protocols.
Precisely. The system working as designed, even if the trigger remains debated.
So let's just summarize this core tension for you, the listener. On one hand, you have K C Venugopal's dramatic account. The delay, the turbulence, the flight signal fault, that long circling period, and then this heart-stopping moment, seeing a reported second aircraft, the captain's swift decision to pull up, which he felt was down to skill and luck.
A very human, very visceral experience of perceived danger.
Definitely. And on the other hand, you have Air India's official clarification. They talk about a precautionary diversion for a suspected technical issue and poor weather. And crucially, they explicitly deny that another aircraft was in fact on the runway, calling the go-around a standard safety maneuver.
Two very different framings of the same set of events.
So if we step back and connect this to the bigger picture, what does an incident like this really reveal?
Well, I think it really throws into sharp relief that fine line, sometimes blurry line, between what constitutes standard safety protocols in aviation, things that happened more often than passengers realize, and moments that are perceived by those on board as genuine crises, averted only by skill and luck.
The subjective experience versus the objective procedure.
Exactly. It underscores how deeply a passenger's experience, often amplified by lack of information or just the inherent stress of flying, can diverge from the technical reality of a situation managed by trained professionals following procedures.
And Venugopal did call for an investigation, didn't he?
Yes, he publicly urged the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, the DGCA, and the Ministry of Civil Aviation to conduct a thorough inquiry, which highlights another key point: the absolute importance of transparency and rigorous investigation in these cases, not just for finding out what technically happened, but for maintaining public trust in air travel. People need to feel confident that safety isn't just about luck.
That trust is fundamental, isn't it?
Absolutely critical.
So it's quite the contrast we've laid out. As you reflect on this, here's maybe a provocative thought to consider. How do you, personally, reconcile these two narratives? The lived experience of a passenger who genuinely felt saved by luck versus an airline's official statement explaining things away as standard safety maneuvers.
It's a tough one. Does the feeling of danger make it real, even if protocol was followed?
And what does this particular incident, the specific communication gap, suggest about the ongoing dialogue, or maybe the lack of dialogue sometimes between the passenger experience and the way aviation safety is communicated? Where does the truth lie when perspectives differ so much? It's something to think about.